cuts in the judicial budget will impact not only the lawyers but the public, because the access to the court system will be proportionately reduced, in my opinion, because of the cutbacks in staff. And the court system was forced to reduce its budget as a result of a huge cut by the legislature. And I realize that everything needs to be cut. I'm not privy to all of the inside information, but I do think that the public is going to be made to suffer as a result of the cuts in the court budget. And in the North Country, I think it's more difficult for people to have to travel. The court system has tried to reduce the number of courts, and the further north you get, the more difficult it is to get to travel. And I'm surprised, frankly, that they've kept the Colebrook District Court open. I foresee that's not going to last. I mean, I think they built the courthouse in Lancaster, which essentially, well, both Lancaster and Berlin, as huge new court buildings, and I think that eventually everything will be consolidated in those two, but I don't know how that's going to play out.
You've been practicing law and a judge for 29 years. Right. How has that world changed? The people that you see, justice?
Well, I think the primary thing is that one thing hasn't changed, I should say, that I think that in the northern part of the state, at least, most people end up in court because of abuse of alcohol, because they're down in their luck. They're not really what I call hardcore criminals. They're people that have had difficulty, whether it's as children or whatever. So I don't see the hardcore criminals. There are a few. In my 29 years, there have probably been a dozen that I consider to be hardcore criminals, generally from outside the area. But most people end up in district court, at least, because of they had too much to drink and were caught for driving while intoxicated, or they were drinking and they did things that they normally wouldn't do, whether it's domestic abuse or even things like robbery and burglary and things like that. I mean, there's been more and more, I think, drug abuse in addition to the alcohol abuse, but alcohol is still the biggest drug problem that we have. There's been a lot more marijuana use, especially lately, and you question whether or not the criminal justice system should be dealing with it. I mean, they determined that you couldn't control alcohol, and I suspect that at some point they're going to legalize marijuana for the same reason. It just becomes impossible to curtail.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of what people do is a result of either looking for drugs, hard drugs, or because of drinking.
Yeah. Outside of that, disputes, do we still in the North Country settle disputes sort of among ourselves more so than using the court, or is...
No, I think part of it, certainly when I was growing up, and people my age probably remember that police would not necessarily arrest you for some of the things you did. And I think part of it was that they knew that the parents would be harder on you than the court system. And what I've seen is a breakdown of the family. I mean, you have two working parents, and as a result, you don't have that at least one stay-at-home parent who is going to rule the roost. So as a result, the police are, I think, arresting people for what I would consider to be less than criminal type behavior. And it, part of the whole new legislation on stalking, I mean, all of those things never existed in the old days, and somehow we'll get along. The new stalking law may have a place, but the legislature, I think, again, passed this legislation and didn't really think through the consequences that it has in the court system. It's really loaded up the court system with a lot of cases of domestic violence. I mean, they're all well-intended laws, but the legislature then turns around and cuts the monies for the courts, and you're left with a much larger caseload, and you know, it's everything's gotten more complicated.
Yeah.